The funeral ended in tears and quiet sobs beneath gray autumn skies as family and lifelong friends said their final farewell to their beloved Margaret. Believing a tragic boating accident had taken her forever, only one person knew the truth, her closest friend who had helped arrange the desperate deception. Hidden inside a secluded lakeside cabin, Margaret waited impatiently through endless hours for news of Daniel's first steps after the service. She believed those choices would finally answer the question that had haunted her for months. Whether 40 years of marriage had been built on truth or carefully hidden betrayal, Daniel's very first reaction would surprise everyone. Watch the complete video until the end, and don't forget to give it a thumbs up. For months before the accident, Margaret was shocked when an anonymous email arrived containing security camera footage showing Daniel sharing coffee with a beautiful young woman nearly 30 years younger. A week later, another message included a video of the pair walking through the lobby of an upscale hotel. The images looked convincing. For a few weeks, she didn't share any of this with Daniel. Instead, she quietly observed him and investigated everything herself, but couldn't find any clue about the truth. Finally, after dinner one evening, she confronted him. Anger filled her heart and tears streamed down her face because she couldn't bear the thought of losing the man for whom she had sacrificed everything: her religion, her family, their wealth, and a life of luxury. It was true that love is blind. Hearing her accusations, Daniel smiled gently and tried to reassure her. He insisted the videos were sophisticated AI-generated deepfakes created to deceive them. He also showed Margaret reports describing criminals who manipulated videos to extort families and destroy reputations. She desperately wanted to believe him. Yet another anonymous package arrived containing photographs, a jewelry receipt for an expensive bracelet she had never received, and copies of several unexplained bank transfers. None of it proved infidelity, but together they quietly poisoned her peace of mind. Unable to silence the growing doubt, Margaret conceived one desperate test that would change both their lives forever. Margaret never wanted to trap Daniel. There were doubts and fears inside her that kept her psychologically weak. She lost her appetite and sleep, her weight kept dropping, her worries continued to grow. She eventually stopped sharing them with Daniel. After waiting for a few months, she could no longer silence the fear growing inside her. With the help of her closest friend, a retired nurse, and the family attorney, she created a plan that only those two people knew about. A weekend boating trip became the perfect cover. When her empty boat was discovered drifting across the lake and a few personal belongings were recovered from the water, authorities concluded that she had drowned. The search lasted for days before it was officially called off. Daniel was out of the country. The news shattered him. He immediately canceled all his business deals and flew home in tears. When he arrived, her funeral had already been arranged with a sealed casket, allowing no one to question the tragic circumstances. Hidden inside the secluded lakeside cabin, Margaret waited anxiously as her friend promised to document everything Daniel did after the funeral. Then, only minutes after the service ended, an unexpected phone call arrived. Daniel had left the cemetery alone and driven somewhere nobody had anticipated. Margaret's heart pounded as her friend described Daniel's movements over the phone. Instead of returning to their empty home, he had driven across town to a modest apartment building. Minutes later, the same young woman from the anonymous videos arrived carrying a small overnight bag. Daniel opened the door for her, and before disappearing inside, they both broke down in tears. Margaret felt her world collapse. Every explanation Daniel had given suddenly seemed impossible to believe. Hours later, the pair left together and drove to a law office where they remained for nearly 2 hours. By evening, rumors had already begun spreading among relatives that Daniel was preparing to transfer assets and rewrite his will. Even Margaret's closest friend quietly admitted that the situation no longer looked innocent. Yet one detail refused to fit. Daniel never entered their family bank, never accessed Margaret's personal accounts, and never removed a single possession from their home. Late that night, instead of returning to the apartment, he unlocked an old storage unit that nobody in the family knew existed. What he carried inside remained hidden, leaving Margaret more confused than ever before. The suspense grew even deeper, and Margaret asked her friend to keep following Daniel. The following morning, Margaret's friend gathered enough courage to follow him from a distance. When he finally left the storage unit, he was carrying several worn boxes, each carefully labeled in Margaret's handwriting. Curious, her friend quietly approached after Daniel had gone and looked through the unit's small window. What she saw left her completely speechless. Every shelf was filled with birthday gifts Margaret had never received. Anniversary cards written years in advance, restored family photographs, and journals documenting Daniel's dreams of growing old beside her. There were also medical files from fertility specialists, receipts showing years of private donations toward infertility research, and records proving Daniel had secretly continued supporting that work long after Margaret had given up hope. The young woman was not his lover at all. She was the daughter of Daniel's closest friend, who had died years earlier, and Daniel had been faithfully honoring a promise to help her complete medical school. As every hidden truth came to light, Margaret broke down in tears. She realized she had mistaken quiet devotion for betrayal, and the crushing weight of guilt, regret, and heartbreak became almost impossible to bear. She wished she could turn back time, but some decisions leave wounds that even love struggles to heal after learning the truth and realizing she had tested her husband's loyalty. Margaret could no longer remain hidden. Overwhelmed by guilt, she asked her friend and the family attorney to take her home before another hour passed. Daniel was sitting alone in the living room, surrounded by unopened sympathy cards and the photographs he had brought back from the storage unit. His eyes were fixed on a picture of their wedding day when the front door slowly opened. As he looked up and saw Margaret standing before him, the color drained from his face. For several moments, he couldn't believe his own eyes. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he whispered, "Is this really true? Is that you, my darling?" For a long moment, neither of them moved. Relief, disbelief, overwhelming joy, and heartbreak collided in complete silence. Hours later, Margaret told him everything, from the anonymous messages to the fake videos and the painful tests she had planned. Daniel finally realized that her death had been nothing more than a test of his loyalty. Deep inside, he felt grateful that he had remained faithful to the woman he had loved for 40 years, yet the pain in his eyes ran far deeper than anger. Margaret broke down in tears, admitting every fear, every anonymous message, and every mistake she had made. Daniel listened quietly before revealing that digital forensic investigators had already confirmed the videos and photographs were sophisticated AI fabrications created by an online extortion group targeting wealthy families. The truth had finally emerged. But the trust they had spent 40 years building now lay broken between them, waiting for a decision only their hearts could make. The following weeks were not filled with easy forgiveness, but with honest conversations, quiet tears, and the slow work of healing. Daniel admitted that the deepest wound was never the fake funeral, but the realization that 40 years of faithful love had been outweighed by anonymous lies and manipulated images. Margaret accepted that fear had blinded her judgment and that trust, once broken, could not be repaired overnight. Together, they cooperated with investigators whose work eventually led to the arrest of the criminal network responsible for creating the AI deepfakes and attempting to extort wealthy families. Although justice was served, both understood that no court could restore the lost peace of those painful days. Instead of allowing that tragedy to define the rest of their lives, they chose to rebuild their marriage one honest conversation, one shared meal, and one quiet act of love at a time. Margaret learned that real loyalty is measured by years of consistent actions, not by convincing digital illusions. Daniel learned that reassurance sometimes requires patience beyond words. Their story became a reminder that technology can imitate faces, voices, and memories, but it can never replace a lifetime of proven character. Thanks for watching. Where are you watching from? Comment the name of your city.